Welcome everyone to Zoom into Books. We're here this afternoon with Marcus Kirsch. He's here to talk with you about his new book, The Wicked Company, and he is also a Next Generation Indie Book Award winner. So I give you Marcus, take it away.
Hello everyone. So yes, shortlisted, unfortunate winner, but recognized, let's say. So hello, I'm Marcus. Thank you everyone for joining and tuning in. So I will talk about my book, The Wicked Company, which is over here and it's over there. And for about the next half an hour, 40 minutes, I'll talk you through my background, why I wrote the book, and what's in the book, and what also happened since then, because it got published in December last year. I finished writing it around about March, July last year. So it's been a year, and as everyone knows, a lot of things have happened, and a lot of things that have happened are quite relevant to the book. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So who am I? I'm from Germany. My background is in both design and technology. So for many years, I've been working in a creative and innovation type of context, looking at how technology changes people's lives and the kind of needs we can design for with people. So the main focus is, or the terminology we would use is human-centered design, with a heavy new technology focus towards innovation. And so I did an MA in something called computer-related design in London around about 2000. And since then, I worked for a variety of industries, in a variety of companies, helping them understand the future, essentially, or future opportunities. Doing that for a few years eventually got me more into the strategic and management side of things. So after a couple of years, I had seen a lot of different organizations, a lot of different companies, all having the challenge of making sense of what everything digital, new kind of experiences, new kind of customer relationships look like. So, what was the change that's been happening since let's say, the 90s, really, since the internet became a thing. However, what I found was that it's not something that started back in the 90s. There's something that started quite early on, and no one was really talking about, yet I could see all the kind of the flags and the characteristics in most of the projects and companies I was working with across industries. So, over the years, industry after industry being affected, disrupted, as they say, by all these new things, there was always a heavy technology focus. And having worked in technology and with technology, being a coder, building things, I found essentially that the technology doesn't matter. It's people, their behavior. Those are the values, those are the things we should actually focus on. The other part was also that complexity was not really the thing. I'm aware and talking to many people who didn't have the privilege to work in like MIT research like I did, or working with design engines like IDEO and looking at innovation aspects. I understand that it must be quite confusing and overwhelming at times when all these new technology labels and terminologies come up. So my ambition was to help that a little bit, to not make it feel that overwhelming. And so I finally ended up writing a book, which is called The Wicked Company. Now, what is a wicked company? So a wicked company is a organization that can solve wicked problems. Wicked problems, in turn, are problems that are different than the problems we knew before. So let me explain this a little bit, because I know it might sound confusing at times. So the book works in 3 parts. One is about explaining the difference, which is to look back into the Industrial Revolution. So during the Industrial Revolution, we basically looked at mass production in order to achieve mass production. And the way we achieved mass production was through de-skilling, which means we needed a lot of workers in a factory being able to replicate products 1,000,000 times. So Henry Ford brought this along, and he removed the diversity of thought from the process, because all he needed was single skills in order to build 1,000,000 cars. It was a great solution for its time, and with the absence of robots and communication tools, we needed people to do that in a manual way. Now we have robots and communication tools, so obviously our companies could do something else. However, at the time, mass production, and even now, we recognize mass production as an example of a tame problem. A tame problem is a problem where we have enough information to understand what the problem is, and we can provide a solution. We do this once, and after the solution is there, the problem is solved. The problem will not change. That is the definition, in simple terms, of a tame problem. So industrial age, mass production, tame problem, great. This is how we have been structuring our organizations, and they've done really well. Now, a wicked problem is a problem that we tend to not get enough information of it in order to fully understand it. So there's an absence of information that we will have as one of the characteristics. The other part is that while we're working on a solution, it will evolve. So over time, a wicked problem tends to evolve. And even when we apply and implement a solution to it, that will further affect the problem. Why is that? Well, that is one of the characteristics of a wicked problem. To give an example, mass production is a tame problem, replicating the same thing again and again with as little variance as possible. Things like crime, poverty, anything that involves a bigger group of people who communicate amongst each other, inform each other, knowledge transfer exists, is essentially a wicked problem. Now, back in the days, poverty and crime were sort of the big wicked problems that people try to tackle, understood that there's not an easy way to get about this. Today, though, since the digital revolution, now we have billions of people communicating, interacting with each other on not just the level of poverty and crime, but on very everyday issues. Therefore, making a lot of product, services, things that happen in society, naturally a wicked problem. Because when a lot of people interact with the problem, they will evolve around the problem. Let's say, for example, something like saving money. You have saving money and you start with something where you have an offer from a bank that is a bank account. And then people look up information on the internet, and then they talk to their friends, and you have forums and, you know, things that happen on the internet, conversations and recommendations, which further inform people how to save money, use different tools, have different behavior that then makes them learn and evolve around the subject matter of saving money. So therefore, any solution that you enter into this problem space of saying, well, how can we help people to save money? Is it just giving them a current account or a savings account? Has significantly changed. It's not just giving people a problem anymore. Today, we're actually talking about solving the problem of saving. And companies are very, very slowly but surely understanding that that's what it is about today. If you want to succeed as an organization, you are likely contributing or trying to help solve a wicked problem, not a tame problem anymore. It's a wicked problem. You're not just delivering products anymore. You're helping people solve problems with the offer, the service you have. So this, in some sense, is sort of the difference here, right? You have one thing that is very clearly defined, and you can throw a solution at it, and that's it. You don't never have to touch it again. And the other part, which is, in a way, a moving target. Now, the big problem is that what I've seen is that organizations are just not prepared and designed in order to solve those or hit those moving targets. And this is sort of what this book is about. Why this is, how big the gap is, what's in the middle, and what we can do in the future in order to be better at this. Because in particular, going into the future, these are the kind of problems we need to be solving. As an example, COVID-19 is identified because it's a pandemic that is a wicked problem. But it's not just a wicked problem organizations deal with. They now have to deal with the way we're going to be working in the future in a wicked problem sense. Are companies prepared for that? Most of them aren't. So when I finished the book last year, I did not really think that wicked problems would become such a thing very quickly, or would become such an urgency very quickly. Because I've been working in change and transformation, helping organizations produce better products and services and change the way they work for a long time. But I thought, like, oh, we got a couple of years to do this. I know we're behind, but we're closing the gap step by step. And then essentially 2020 happened, and now we're here. And I think a lot of you will understand that the guidebook just flew out of the window. So what I really hope is that my book helps understand this. How does it do that? Well, as I said before, so the book is in 3 parts. So it talks about the history of why organizations are structured in this very rigid, tame problem way. It talks as well about silos, about roles of people in teams, the way management works. Because a lot of these things, and I know many of you out there will recognize this, that silos, not being able to talk to other people in the organization has always been an issue. And that was okay, as long as you only had to deal with tame problems. Now that we're living in this wicked world, wicked problem world, this won't work anymore. So this has to change. So I think many people's gut feeling is definitely right. And some of the feedback I got from the book is when people read it, it's like, oh, I felt like that for a long time. I just couldn't put it into words. So I'm very happy that I managed to choose the right words, and I try to use as little jargon as possible to help get that narrative out. So we've got the history part that I talked a little bit about. So Industrial Revolution, we still have companies being described like that. Now the middle part talks a lot about the technology advances we had, let's say, since the 90s. So for me as a technologist, and I think for a lot of people out there who are not technologists, a lot of these things always sound new and new and new. So every 3 months there's something new. These days we got blockchain, and we had 20 years ago we had Bluetooth, and then we had streaming internet, and then we had social media doing all its thing it does, and we had redistributed system like and things like Napster and Pirate Bay, and everything felt like it's always a new thing, it's always a new thing, it's always a new thing. So one of the things I'm trying to explain in the middle part of the book is that those things aren't very different, actually. They're all based on the same principle, and they're just small iterations of each other. They're actually not new things. However, as it goes from industry to industry, people tend to put different labels on it. And it's very misleading. And it's been a very wrong narrative for a long time. So the middle part tries to take that away and open it up and say, look, it's all the same stuff. It just went through different colors. It's actually less advanced over 10 years than you think. It's the same thing in slightly different flavor. And that's really good to understand, because it also means that the technology aspect has just trickled through industries. It has not been the silver bullet, because it is not about the technology. It is about people and their behavior, because people and behavior make the complexity part of a wicked problem. If we wouldn't have all these people interacting with each other, things would be more simple and things would be more controllable and solutions would be more effective. But they're not, because people are being people. People are not always logical and rational. So they interact and they do these things, and things evolve and things cascade. And if, you know, and then you have eventually Facebook being called up in court, testifying if what they're doing is right and why they're challenging, you know, their platform is managing to affect a democracy. Because even people like Facebook, even people like Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think have a real understanding that what they're dealing with is a wicked problem. Or maybe they don't care, I don't know. So the middle part is really that, to maybe demystify a little bit all this technology stuff and the startup stuff and all the hype around these things that allegedly solve these problems. But as you can tell, or as you hopefully will read, is those people aren't magic. They're not all geniuses. They oftentimes have the same tame organizational approach to problems, especially when they get bigger. So they have the same challenge. So that's the middle part of it. So the third part then really looks at what we can do about it. So if a wicked problem has a different characteristic, then maybe this is what we should be focusing on. And there's a couple of particular differences that I will elaborate a little bit that are really good to keep in mind and take away maybe from the book, and maybe a little bit from what I'm telling you now. But for that purpose, I will go a little bit back into my own life, my own career, just to give you a bit of an example and some more concrete examples, because I think some of the aspects can sound quite theoretical. I'm aware of it. Now, as I said before, so my background is both in design and technology, but it's not only that. I've been working through lots of different practices. I've been called very different names in a good way. And all the positions I held at different companies had different names. The only consistency is that I looked at problems in a particular way and I tried to solve them, not really caring about the process, but caring about the outcome. In most cases, it was about that. Focus on the problem, do whatever it takes, take any tool you might want that you think can help you, or get the right people in the room, get the right people together, and focus on the outcome. Is it effective? Is it not? Can we produce it? Can we not? And that's been it. The interesting part for me was that, well, I love puzzles. So, you know, my background is not just design and technology. When I was younger, I used to do skateboarding. I played volleyball. I was a ballroom dancer. I've done all sorts of things because I have a natural curiosity about things. And maybe that makes me a bit predestined to the wicked problem thing, because I like puzzles. But looking at things this way, I think is very beneficial to other people as well. So that's, again, it's one of the ambitions of the book. And to tell you also, maybe give you a bit of the back history on the wicked problem thing through my story that I only found out when I started writing the book is, so first of all, Wicked Problems was actually named by a German person. So, hey, back in Germany, a professor who came up with the idea of a wicked problem. His background was in urban planning and architecture. So they looked at these kind of complex systems and how they can manage it and predict the outcome or design for a better outcome. And the thing he found was that the general scientific and engineering approach to solving wicked problems, or those types of problems, those characteristics, just doesn't work. Because for a scientific or a engineering approach, you need a contained, known context, a lab, so to speak, a very controlled environment. And you never have that with a wicked problem. So he started it back in Germany and then moved over to Stanford. So not surprisingly, over at Stanford, the wicked problem idea came to fruition. And around about the same time, and I don't have the detail in there, because I don't think the history is very straight on that, but out of that came design thinking. So design thinking of Stanford had been designed, which I didn't know until I did more research on the book, to solve particularly wicked problems. So me learning design thinking during my MA, doing research for the book, finally closed that circle of, you know, German inventing the word, me looking into this, knowing design thinking, and finally going back like, hang on a second, every time I find design thinking, I never hear people talk about wicked problems. Rarely, really ever. It's a problem solving tool, but no one particular says wicked problems. So there's that odd little narrative, and a circle that for me personally closed down after skateboarding and ballroom dancing, all sorts of things. So that's quite lovely, and makes the lonely effort of writing a little bit more valuable, so to speak. Now, if I now go back to the work I do today, which brings a lot of proof into the concepts in the book. So I have now been working for companies from Nissan, BT, HSBC, Telecom Italia, like a variety of companies from, you know, automotive banking, all sorts. I work in advertising for a while. I work for the big museums in London, the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum. And in any case, what usually happens is that, you know, you look at the problem you're trying to solve, and the better you describe or investigate and look at the problem you have, the more likely you find the right direction, and you can de-risk which direction you're investing your money and your efforts and what kind of solution you're building for. And that's a lot of something that sits in design thinking, but for a wicked problem, it is even more important. As they say in chaos theory, the thing you do at the very beginning is exponentially more important than everything that happens after. Because in a wicked problem, if you know that whatever you will do, actually put into reality through experimentation, will affect the problem. So you better be quite sure of what you put into reality. And at the same time, once you're in there, you have to actively engage with it. So you have to keep experimenting. And experimenting means failing, but failing also means learning. There is no learning without failing, right? So what wicked problems push us to do more than anything is to get into a state of constant learning. You're constantly engaging with something. And I think it was someone over at Microsoft who said, learn to love the problem, not the solution. Because the solution will be temporary. In 3, 4, 6 months' time, your solution will look differently because you have learned, you have iterated, and you'll do something new. And again, in the third part of my book, to some extent, I talk about this. And the aspect of not just experimenting, but having a company that can experiment like that and can try and have self-enabled team that can make decisions on what they try next is really important. So some of you might be familiar with the aspect of more and more companies trying to experiment with variants of what they put out there. But it's not just that. So that's what the teams do, the delivery teams, maybe to some extent the design or strategic teams. But actually, if you look back up at leadership, that's the other thing that quite has to be affected by that. It's not a one-way street anymore. It's a circular thing, right? So the more I learn down here where I produce things, this information needs to be able to float back up and actually help leadership also learn and understand the problem that their company is dealing with better, right? So that's a trick. If you ever been working for a bigger company and you complained about the fact that leadership really has very top line ideas of what they're trying to communicate, you're obviously not alone. But I think what leadership has been tackling with for a long time in this kind of tame organizational structure is, well, it's all siloed. So we can't really interact. We don't have a shared language. It's all like from here, and then it's managers, and then people actually finding out really interesting stuff, but that never flows back. It's never been set up to be a means of a circular thing. And it's one of those things that is really missing, you know? Something, for example, that we really managed to implement over at BET, and in parts at places like Nationwide and HSBC, where there are efforts to actually really start doing that, and it's really interesting to see. So, you know, having written the book, it's obviously not my only source of income. So, you know, my main job is now to consult companies, small or large, on exactly that. How to define a problem? How to define a problem that you realize you're part of a wicked problem? And how do you then investigate it and learn from it a little bit quicker than your competition, or well enough in order to create the right value for your customers, is essentially the thing now I've been doing for the last 2 years. And with the book, I hope that I've helped that narrative in very simple terms to be able to be read and understood, and hopefully it will help you. And as I heard from some people who've read the book, it helps them sell this idea internally and say, look, we've always been overwhelmed and we don't know what tech to buy, and we don't know if it's about people and how do we activate people. How do we do not just the digital transformation, but a cultural transformation? How do we do that? How do we get these pieces together? And how much are they relevant? Well, I hope the book is a starting point. And I hope that beyond the book, I can help you. So that's sort of roughly the book, and it should give you a really great introduction into just the idea of it and the difference, and maybe it helps you understand that gap or lack of knowledge or the amount of overwhelming aspects you feel, and maybe it helps you cut through that and sift a little bit through it. So, but the book was finished last year, so since then it's been nearly a year, and one thing that has happened since, apart from COVID-19, of course, is on a lesser side. So in April, I started a podcast, the Wicked Podcast, as if you could have guessed. And the aim of the podcast is twofold. One is that while I was doing my research, and over the last few years, I obviously read tons of other business books. I understand that no one has time to read all the business books. I don't. I pick what's recommended. I just let curiosity play out. So I thought, like, okay, well, if no one can read it, can someone help read them faster, or actually pull out the right pieces? And for me personally, which ideas and concepts contribute to this wicked problem model and that approach? So I started with a friend of mine, Troy Norcross, who is a specialist on blockchain, and he runs his own blog, and he writes a lot about it, and he's a consultant in his own means. And so we decided to go read particular types of books that sort of add up to the idea and flesh it out and look at it from a different perspective. So since then we looked at, we talked to people like Tom Peters, who's a over 40 years guru of management consulting, about how has it changed over the last 40, 50 years? What still matters? What doesn't? Before and after the digital revolution. So we talked to him. We talked to people like Richard Chataway, who is one of the leading people around behavioral science. Behavioral science, beyond design thinking and service design and business analytics and org design, all these things that come together to shape new companies. Behavioral science is one of the really interesting new areas of that. It is one of those areas that people should really try and look at, because if you can behaviorally nudge people, they have amazing approaches, amazing tools, and a really great understanding that value to focus on and why you would go one direction, not the other. So to help business decisions, great way, very thorough process. So that's Untitled Chapter way. You talk to Geoff Colvin about learning. So, there is actually deliberate learning, which is totally different from the usual learning we have. So a lot of companies who say they have learning and learning programs actually are quite ineffective at it. So how to integrate learning into a day-to-day business more? How can you, grow as a person in a business? And how can a business therefore grow being a people business, which every business really is? And he had some really great insights on it too. So we're now just finishing up season 1, and it's been a great experience. There's so many confirmations and themes that we want to explore a bit more. So that's the Wicked podcast. So the Wicked Company, Wicked podcast, as the Wicked Company consultation. So it starts to build up, and greatly so. And I like the fact that I can bring all these different things together. So I'm just looking at potential question here. So I'm sort of now 30 minutes, and I think this should maybe give you a good gist of the book and a little bit where I might be going with next, and the podcast and other things potentially leading to the next book or small book series on different aspects of this. So I got a question here. With COVID-19, many businesses are frantically in reinventing themselves. Is this a wicked problem? Yes, I think it is. So obviously, everyone has the question at the moment of how are we going to get out of this COVID-19 situation? And I think the trickiest part is this. Likely we will fall back on old habits, which is we cut people, we become more efficient, and therefore we survive. Oddly enough, and I just talked to people about this today, there is plenty of statistics and research from the likes of McKinsey that say, actually, we should invest in a company, should invest 10, 15, 20% of it into future revenue, into future opportunities. This has always shown a higher return of investment than anything else. Your existing products, the thing you do today will not get you much further. The thing you innovate or look at innovation to maybe build next year, that will be your future revenue. It's a strategy has been proven again and again. In terms of a wicked problem, it's really important, because if you don't evolve, the wicked problem will evolve regardless. Just as COVID-19, they don't care about the money you have. All it care about is like, can you react to it? Can you actually show the behavior to have a reaction to it? Like stay at home, put the mask on, do the things it takes, doesn't matter what, the things it takes to actually align with it and help fight it back. Sometimes saying fire with fire, but essentially you do whatever it takes. Don't stick with the old. You might have to go into the new, meaning that more and more people might work at home. So COVID-19 definitely has pushed us into a scenario where more than ever, we have to adopt the characteristics of a wicked problem, and that behavior means adopting, learning, iterating as fast as we can, and do new things, not old things. Don't fall back on the old. I would predict, and I don't have the number and I don't have a glass ball, but invest in the future. Try something new rather than something old, because the old one, I don't think we live in the old world anymore. So I was also asked, and if you go to thewickedcompany.com, when I was last year touring for the book and I gave some talks and so on. So I went to Saudi Arabia and the Tanwein Festival, which is once a year. So I think last year was in August, October. Yeah. So I gave a talk there and a workshop. So it was really interesting, because what they're doing there, they have a cultural center and a cultural festival month there. And I had never been to Saudi Arabia, and it was very interesting to talk to a very different cultural backdrop. And as controversial as the country can be, it's great to see a place like that where it's westernized to the point where they really want to bring new information and knowledge to that place for the country itself to see other ways of going about things. So when I was there was two things happening. One was that they were very welcoming. The talk I gave there, which you can find the video on thewickedcompany.com, which goes through the book and the ideas, and a bit through a project like the BT project that I did. Applying those concepts was lovely. The workshop was really interesting, and I think the part I was most impressed with was that most of the participants in the workshop were women. They were all mainly covered up, which if you ever run a workshop yourself, it wasn't very easy because you want to read the room, you want to do that. But I was struck by the curiosity and interest those women actually had on looking at something new and learning something new. Very few men, maybe not surprising, because the men have their status there and they're quite happy with what they have there. So, you know, if I would have any guess at it, I would say the women there are the future, and it was amazing. I was quite nervous about the cultural difference and how I do what I can do here in Europe, be able to do it there. And I had to adjust to some extent and find a common cultural ground. And to some level, oddly enough, the common cultural ground was Lego. So we did a lot with Lego, build scenarios and those things, and people expressed themselves over it. And it was a wonderful experience, to be honest. I'd love to go back and, you know, meet maybe the same people or new people there. And I was struck by, you know, the energy and the curiosity those women had, and, you know, just what they got out of the workshop. And yeah, they were very congratulatory over it, and they were very happy with asking me to come back and things. So I was quite relieved. I was getting things across in such a very different context. So yeah, so that was taming. So I'm asked if I come to. Yes, I'd love to. I think once the restrictions are down. Yeah, I think, you know, one thing obviously is in my work as a consultant, the face-to-face, really being in the room with people, just makes all the difference. It really does. Zoom can work really well, and there's more and more tools that work together that we probably have to get used to anyways. And I've been used to that quite a bit, you know, again, when I work for other big organizations who have worldwide presence, that we ended up doing workshops from the UK with India and those kind of things. So I'm a bit used to it. At the same time, I know the difference between the impact it has when you're actually in the room. So as much as I am quite a supporter of remote working and I'm quite comfortable with it, I can see sort of the downsides to that as well. There's certain things that just don't work over something like Zoom or remotely quite that well. There are other aspects as well, where I think some of them are psychologically. You know, I did a survey a couple of weeks ago about working from home, and you know, what people recognized was not that, oh, you know, the video chat works, that's fine, but you know, there are things like, you know, can my boss actually acknowledge that, you know, after 5 o'clock I'm not available, I'm not going to answer anything, I'm not going to have any meetings after that, you know, or that it's too many meetings, they're not efficient. And people started talking a lot on other, you know, talking about in other surveys and articles about, oh, is that becoming inefficient? It's like, to be honest, I've seen plenty of other meetings in real space that were utterly inefficient. And I think those problems sometimes just get brought a bit more to our attention now that things are in a different context. And I think they were always there. The good thing is probably we now have the opportunity to a bit more openly talk about it and say, right, okay, well, you know, I need those hours in my day to actually put my head down and work, and other hours, and I want to limit those and make them efficient when I am on Zoom calls, and who is on Zoom calls, and who needs to be there and who doesn't need to be there. It's a question that's been going along meetings for, I don't know, my last 20 years. COVID didn't create that. It's always been there, but I think it's a very good opportunity to review all these things and ask questions again. I think it's very important. So long story short, yes, I'd love to come to the US. I have some friends over in New York. I have some friends over in San Francisco. A publisher sits somewhere in between. So great to do a tour. So anyone out there, if you want to have me around for a talk or workshop or anything, let me know. And I'm just slowly looking at the time. We're about at 40 minutes. Okay, I got another question coming in. Wicked and tame problem solving can also apply to families and individuals. Would you agree? Let me take a thinking sip there. So yes, it does, of course. I think the biggest wicked problem actually is life. We as people are so complex. There's so many interactions and interdependencies of everything we do, our memories, what we do next, what we did yesterday, the way we question things. I mean, even if you have a routine, you have a 9-to-5 job, it's very solid, everything else, your house is nearly paid off or not, you know, in most cases, I would argue, yeah, but life tends to, you know, surprise you all the time. There's always things that shift about. There's always things that have a different dynamic, especially people to people. If you're just looking at people to people, even in a, you know, relationship that has just two people in it, everybody knows there's a complexity there that you go, oh, that was okay a few months ago. Why is this not okay anymore? Or why is this suddenly a thing? Or why do I think it's a thing, right? So as people, I think we're highly, highly complex. And therefore, if only two start connecting, and then obviously in a family, it tends to be more. If you talk family about, you know, at least one child or more, or cousins or uncles and other parents, grandparents, of course, it's wicked. It's such a dynamic. That it's definitely your first ever wicked problem is your own life. Interestingly enough, I think over at Stanford, they actually have a life design course, which is based on design thinking and uses this wicked problem design thinking approach to your own life. So there's interesting, I think there's a podcast with interesting talk on it. But essentially it goes like that. You can actually apply the same defining your problem, investigating your problem, doing different actions, why it evolves for yourself, for the dreams you have, for the job you like, for where you want to go in your life, personal life, career. You can apply the same things. So the nice thing about that as well is, and you know, I'm very methodology agnostic. I know of my heritage of design thinking, all these things. I've been talking with anything from psychologists to life coaches to enterprise architects to designers, artists, finance people. I am very curious about everyone who brings anything to me and asks me any question from any direction. What I normally see is that the problems tend to be similar but phrased differently, right? And most of the questions are based around wicked problems. So one maybe tidbit as well about talking about organizations and people, I think first, in terms of teams working with a bunch of people on any problem in a company that I think might be easily applicable to any personal life is, so Google did a research on the effectiveness of their team. So which are the good teams, which are the bad teams, and why? In a research project called Project Aristotle. So you can Google that, the research out there. Interestingly, the characteristics they found that make a team really great, or a bunch of people great, working great together, are soft skills and things like empathy. Not the skill level, not the IQ or intellect, none of it. There are simple things like if the team, for example, lets everyone talk, listens to every voice on the table, right? It's those kind of things. And that for me is not surprising, because those are the kind of things that if you have a wicked problem, a problem that's so complex that you're trying to understand better, you want to listen to every voice. You want to listen because it affects that person too. Just because I'm the manager doesn't mean I know more or less. I'm still a person, and this is another person. They will have an angle that is relevant, because these days, these things are so hard to crack, these problems. We better listen to every voice, which also means we have, you know, extroverts and introverts on the table. Introverts often don't like to speak, so we have to enable people to speak out. And it's the same how problem solving works in a relationship or between two people. You know, we often have people with special jobs going into a problem space and negotiating, say, okay, now you talk, now you talk, now you listen, now you listen. You're not allowed to interfere. You have to listen. And when you talk about how you feel, not what you think it is, but how you feel, right? So, and all these mechanics are the same as, they totally apply to solving wicked problems. And also they should be applied in companies. Often they're not, because of team dynamics, politics, hierarchies. So these are one of the things we really have to work on. And it's not surprising that some companies like P&G and others have started to eliminate management positions or redistributed governance in organizations, because they realize that if we have governance, if we have too many people tell other people what to do and what to say and what to think, we're not going to hear all this extra potential. We're not going to hear that knowledge, because every person that's actually working for us has knowledge. And it's all relevant to some extent to help us. Everyone should contribute helping us understand this, because the challenges are really, really big. Yeah. It translates in every aspect of your life and work. And that's sort of the beauty of it. So I like to look at it quite in a detailed level as much as in a very top line level, to say, you know, I look at this, I look at my own life in that way at times. And then it's my job. So I see it in other people and I take that back to inform my life. So that's sort of my constant learning aspect. So looking at the time, do we have any other questions out there? I'm asking this out to Kathy there. She sends me anything else.
No, we don't, Marcus. That was very informative.
And it's good. We're at 45, 46 minutes. Just about time when you get probably really bored about what I have to say. So whoever tuned in, listen in, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for staying till now, if you haven't dropped off yet. The Wicked Company, you can buy it on Amazon. You can Google and have a look at the Wicked podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Please subscribe, please comment, tell us how we can do this better. If you want to get in contact, you can contact me at Marcus with a C, as on the book. There you go. At thewickedcompany.com. You can also contact me via my website, thewickedcompany.com. Have a look at the video. I hope you like the book. If you like the book, write me a review. Reviews are important, as my publisher tells me. So yes, thank you very much for your time, for your interest. Please get in contact. Ask me anything. Please do. And thank you very much.